Dr. Faris is a qualified physician who obtained his medical degree from Basra, Iraq in 1974. He later received a Fellow of the Royal College of Surgeons from the Royal College of Surgeons in Edinburgh in May 1983. In 1992, he was accredited as a consultant in rehabilitation medicine on neurological rehabilitation and served as the clinical lead and clinical director in various healthcare providers in South Warwickshire and Coventry. At the time of the events leading to this hearing, Dr. Faris was working as a consultant in rehabilitation medicine for South Warwickshire NHS Foundation Trust. From February 2019 to May 31, 2019, he was responsible for providing medical cover to two facilities, Lillington House and Helen Leigh House, both managed by Castle Froma Neurocare, a charity based in Royal Leamington Spa. The allegation against Dr. Faris is that on or around May 15 and 29, 2019, he entered the room of patient A at Lillington House and touched patient A's wife, Mrs. B, on her arm and left breast without her consent. It is further alleged that he hugged Mrs. B and squeezed her left breast. Additionally, it is claimed that after Mrs. B left the room, Dr. Faris inappropriately followed her and asked personal questions about her family and residence. The actions of Dr. Faris are said to have been sexually motivated and carried out while Mrs. B was in a vulnerable state. The concerns regarding these incidents were initially reported to the General Medical Council on January 26, 2021, by Ms. C, a specialist ventilation nurse involved in the care of patient A. Dr. Faris, through his counsel, made admissions to paragraph 1 of the allegation, acknowledging that he entered patient A's room at Lillington House Care Home between May 15 and 29, 2019, while patient A was sleeping. The tribunal accepted these admissions as admitted and found them proved. During the proceedings, the General Medical Council presented witness evidence from the following individuals: Mrs. B, who provided oral evidence in person; Mr. D, a care assistant at Castle Froma Neurocare, who provided evidence via video link; Ms. E, the clinical manager and registered manager of Lillington House, who provided oral evidence in person. In addition to the witnesses who testified orally, the GMC submitted witness statements from the following individuals who did not appear in person: Ms. C, with a statement dated August 2, 2021. Ms. F, the occupational therapy team lead at Castle Froma, with a statement dated June 25, 2021. Mrs. B's sister, with a statement dated November 23, 2021. Dr. Faris also provided his own witness statement, dated April 21, 2022, and gave oral evidence during the hearing. The tribunal considered various documentary evidence provided by both parties, including but not limited to documentation related to the Trust's investigation, including a handwritten statement by Mrs. B dated May 31, 2019. Patient A's medical records. A plan of patient A's room prepared by Mrs. B and her son. Photographs of patient A's room. Records pertaining to Mrs. B's complaint to NHS Continuing Healthcare regarding Lillington House Care Home. A telephone note between the GMC and Mrs. B. An email from Mrs. B to the GMC, enclosing a screenshot of an iPhone note made by Mrs. B. Various testimonials and a patient survey summary related to Dr. Faris. In reaching its decision on the facts, the tribunal considered that the burden of proof rested on the GMC, and it was their responsibility to prove the allegation. Dr. Faris did not have to prove anything. The standard of proof applied was the balance of probabilities, meaning whether it was more likely than not that the events occurred. The tribunal took into account the advice of the legal assessor in various matters throughout its deliberations. It considered Dr. Faris's good character and the fact that he had given evidence, which is a positive feature supporting his credibility. The tribunal also recognized that Dr. Faris's good character may make it less likely that he acted as alleged. The weight to be given to Dr. Faris's good character was a decision for the tribunal, which took into account all the information known about him, including positive testimonials provided as part of his case. Regarding sexual motivation, the tribunal considered Dr. Faris's actions in the context of the evidence presented. It referred to the cases of Jagjeevan vs. GMC and Harris vs. GMC, which addressed the issue of sexual motivation. The tribunal noted that the best evidence of sexual motivation could be the behavior itself, and it might be appropriate to draw an irresistible inference of sexual motivation if the behavior could only be perceived as overtly sexual without any other plausible innocent explanation. In relation to allegations regarding touching carried out without Mrs. B's consent, the tribunal considered the evidence and whether Mrs. B consented to the described actions. It also examined whether Dr. Faris reasonably believed that Mrs. B was consenting. The tribunal has made the following determinations regarding the facts. Dr. Faris entered patient A's room at Lillington House Care Home between May 15 and 29, 2019, while patient A was sleeping. After kneeling down beside Mrs. B, patient A's wife, Dr. Faris placed his hand on her left arm and touched her left breast with the back of his fingers. When Mrs. B got up and moved to the other side of patient A's bed, it was not proved that Dr. Faris hugged her or squeezed her left breast. Upon Mrs. B exiting patient A's room, it was not proved that Dr. Faris inappropriately followed her and asked her questions about visiting patient A, having children, their ages, or where she lived. It was not proved that the actions described in paragraphs 2 and 3b were carried out without Mrs. B's consent. It was not proved that the actions described in paragraphs 2, 3a, and 3b were sexually motivated. It was not proved that Mrs. B was vulnerable due to her mental state at all material times. The tribunal considered all the evidence presented during the fact stage, including oral and documentary evidence. In the submissions made on behalf of the General Medical Council, the Council argued that the facts found proved did not amount to misconduct, and therefore, the GMC did not make any positive submission regarding misconduct or impairment. On behalf of Dr. Faris, the Council argued that there had been no misconduct in the case, asserting that an inadvertent touch could not be considered serious professional misconduct. The tribunal was aware of the two-stage process, first determining if the facts amounted to misconduct, and if so, whether that finding could lead to a finding of current impairment. The tribunal recognized that the decision on impairment was solely a matter of its own judgment, with no burden or standard of proof at this stage. In considering whether the facts found proved amounted to misconduct, the tribunal referred to good medical practice and examined its findings of fact, the evidence, and the circumstances of the case. It also took into account the submissions from both parties. The tribunal noted that the first allegation provided factual background, and in relation to the second allegation, it found that Dr. Faris had inadvertently touched Mrs. B's left breast with the back of his fingers while placing his hand on her left arm. The tribunal determined that an inadvertent or accidental touch did not constitute misconduct and did not consider it to be deplorable or a significant breach of good medical practice. It concluded that Dr. Faris's behavior did not amount to serious misconduct. Consequently, as the tribunal found that the facts proved did not amount to misconduct, it determined that Dr. Faris's fitness to practice was not impaired.